First of all, thank you all for coming here this afternoon to our Civil War Museum here in Kenosha. Actually, this is part of a different history, a history of Kenosha here. As 20 years ago, this was the site of the Chrysler Assembly Plant that closed in 1989 and resulted in a development opportunity for the city of Kenosha that took some 15 years. And was completed, well, it's still ongoing, I guess, but mainly completed about 6 or 7 years ago. And what you see is what you get. This was a 70-acre property that the assembly plant was closed in 1989. The city went through the demolition, environmental cleanup, and the rebuilding of this property. And so we've got some history in facing what we're facing now, with a 100-acre property on the west side of Kenosha, or what used to be called the west side. Now it's much more of the central city. This whole process that we are, you know, kind of have a significant date here today. It's not the end, certainly not the end. It's more of a beginning. But the process that got us to where we are now started about 2.5 years ago with the announcement that the Chrysler plant, which would be closing, the Chrysler Engine Plant would be closing. About 1.5 years ago, Dr. Ed Montgomery, who was then the auto czar for the administration, visited Kenosha with members of his federal staff, Department of Justice, the EPA. We connected at that time with federal officials. They had a chance to see our issues here in Kenosha, and the process took a leap forward at that point. The city has been very aggressive, I would say, in trying to pull all the parties together to come to this agreement where we are and where we stand today. 10 weeks ago, all of the parties met. Some 30, 35 people met face-to-face in the offices of Godfrey and Kahn in Milwaukee and started this process, a very intense negotiation process, to get to where we are today, or where we got about 1.5 weeks ago when this agreement was finalized. Some of the key issues, I'll just go over some of the key points of the agreement and how we got to where we are. The stipulation and agreed order is the first agreement of its kind between the United States, Wisconsin, the city of Kenosha, Old Carco Liquidation Trust, J.P. Morgan Chase as first lien agent to the first lien lenders. The city received significant support from Governor Walker's office, from the State Department of Justice, the state DNR, on a federal level, the federal EPA, the Department of Justice. We developed, I think, a good working relationship with our government partners, the city of Kenosha, the lien holders, Old Carco, and we all came together that day in Milwaukee with the same goal of getting to this agreement. And I think where we are is a win-win. If it could be described as a win-win-win for all parties, this certainly is. The agreement provides significant benefit to the city in its quest to redevelop the Kenosha Engine Plant site and ensure that it is handled in a way that is protective of the environment and of the city's residents. Some of the individual benefits to the city has option to take title to the plant site and thus to ensure input on and control over DNR-led cleanup. Kenosha Engine Plant title will, after transfer, be freed of lenders' wraparound liens, reportedly in the amounts exceeding $400 million. The engine plant buildings will be demolished to slab by the Old Carco Liquidation Trust at no cost to the city, in compliance with the applicable laws, and subsurface depressions will be filled. The groundwater recovery system that is in place will be funded and maintained throughout this process. The property will be fenced in by the trust at no cost to the city. The city will have access to $10 million from the federal government for cleanup in partnership with the EPA and the DNR. The agreement gives the city significant liability limitation, which is very important in environmental cleanup. City will enter into negotiations with the U.S. Treasury to reach agreement on circumstances under which the federal liens for $10 million in cleanup funds may be removed. The trust has agreed to comply with all applicable law during auction and demolition and will establish a $1 million fund as security for compliance with these laws. The city has been granted access to the property during demolition and salvage to monitor compliance. The city and the trust agreed to dismiss the pending litigation between the parties in New York Bankruptcy Court and the Milwaukee Federal Court. So there is a long list there of protections that the city will enjoy as this process goes forward. Just a brief timeline that the auction of the equipment that remains in the buildings will occur within the next several weeks, and then over the next 6 months or so, as the equipment will be removed from the buildings, then demolition will proceed over perhaps the next year until all of the buildings have been removed, and I stress all of the buildings, right down to the slab on grade, at which point the city would have option to take control of the property.